Hope you enjoy, and John, if you're ready, let's get going.
Thank you, Georgia. Thank you, everybody, and welcome. My name is John Tanquerary. I'll introduce myself briefly in a second. I'm going to be talking about the science of skin health, in particular reference to the Zeo range of products. Just bear in mind that normally the training with the Zeo products is 2 days, and we're going to fit in what we can in about 20 or 30 minutes. So it's going to be necessarily sort of brief and to the point, but hopefully for those of you that are new to Zeo, it'll give you an introduction as to what's possible. And for those of you familiar with it, a bit of a refresher. So briefly, this is me. I run Mulberry House Clinic, which is just outside Northampton, and it's a clinic we've run for the last 17 years. I've used Dr. Abaji's products during most of that time. I spent some time in his clinic, and as Georgia said, I'm a trainer for Zeo as well. The reason I like the Zeo products, ultimately it's the results they give, but also they are developing products all the time. And I think the other thing that sets Zeo apart, the formulations, the way the products are formulated, the very specific delivery systems, which we'll go into a little bit, and some of the patented ingredients that are in the products, I think make them quite special. So Dr. Abaji, if anybody has heard him speak before, has his own definition of what is skin health. And I suppose ultimately what we're trying to do with his products is recreate the skin of the person we're treating to a condition more akin to how it would have been when they were younger. If we think of children, basically anyone pre-teenage, they tend to have pretty good skin. And it's only really once puberty kicks in, cumulative sun exposure over time, pollutants, and any number of other things, that our skin tends to degrade. And so if we think of the products as trying to recreate that environment to create that healthy skin that we had when we were younger, that's essentially what we're trying to do. So first of all, I'm just going to show you a few of my own results just to show the sort of things that are possible. You know, if they're possible for me, they're possible for anybody to reproduce these results. So just briefly here, we've got a lady here, quite a young lady with some solar lentigines. She also had some melasma on her forehead and just a general sort of freckly, discolored appearance on her skin. And this was just 3 months on a Zeo regime, created a beautiful result, which I think many people would think, you know, she must have had peels, lasers, that sort of thing. But this is purely just with creams here. Next lady, you can see on the left, she has redness. Her big problem really was flushing and the discomfort and embarrassment that went with that, alongside a little bit of pigmentation there as well. And this was just 5 weeks between the photographs on a relatively straightforward regime, and she's continued to do really well. It really sort of changed her life around, really. This lady, just this rather tired, almost sort of dirty looking complexion, I suppose, a bit acne prone as well. And again, over a 3-month period, you can see how the skin looks so much more refreshed, brighter, firmer, more even, etc. Acne is another area we can do well with these products. And just an example of that. Another lady with the rosacea here, and again, the same story. Really quite disabling, sort of flushing problems, this heat, discomfort, irritation feeling, and over a period of months, dramatic improvement. And interestingly, her improvements continued. She's been on the products now, I think, for about 18 months or so, but it's been a continuous sort of improving process throughout that time. Very pleasing, really. Here we have someone with really just this fixed background redness, and again, a feeling of sensitivity and irritation all the time. And this was, again, a simple regime, 6 weeks from the first picture to the second, and a really nice improvement. And even problems like melasma we can treat quite successfully. So what is Dr. Abaji's definition of skin health? If we look on the left-hand side there, he will talk about healthy skin being smooth, even in colour, firm, tight, well hydrated, by which we mean sort of healthy and hydrated from cellular activity within rather than simply from slapping anything on the outside. It's tolerant, which means it's not sensitive, it's resilient, if you like. Contour rich, so it's got curves, it's got volume and shape, and it's free of active disease such as acne, rosacea, etc. And I think we'll all recognise that if we think of someone with perfect skin, that sort of sums things up quite nicely. So if we take the counterpart of that, what happens as we get older, and perhaps the people we see in our clinics who have had sun damage, who have had other problems with the skin, etc., we see basically the opposite. So rough, discoloured skin, that sort of weakness, laxity that creeps in, maybe feeling dry, a little bit rough. And we do hear of people saying that the skin just feels sensitive, it's irritated, it reddens easily, it flushes, etc. And we lose volume inevitably over time, of course, and there can be underlying diseases present as well. So what are the things that we might like to do to change that? So if we we have a problem with the slide. Sorry about this. Something to do with the way I've put the slides together. It's now been uploaded. So let's go back to this one. So I'm not going to have to sort of verbally go through this, but essentially where we have smooth skin, which becomes rough, we want to reverse that. So we want to take away that roughness. And how are we going to do that? We can do that by exfoliating the skin well. We can do it by other chemical agents that we can add to the skin, which are going to make that different. So if we have dyschromic skin, we have discoloration, we want to alter the way the melanocytes behave. We want to change that behavior of the pigment cells to even out the color. If the skin is weak and lax, we want to firm it up by producing new collagen, hyaluronic acid, etc., in order to improve that. Clearly, if it's dry, we need to hydrate it. But again, we want to hydrate it because the skin is healthy inside. And obviously, things like glycosaminoglycans, hyaluronic acid, has that water-retaining effect. So if we can simulate that, we're going to do better than we are by simply slapping on some hydrating, moisturizer. Where the skin's intolerant, this normally has a lot to do with this concept of the skin barrier function not working properly, and we'll talk a little bit about that shortly. If someone is hollow and sunken, there may not be much else other than filler that we're going to do for something like that. And clearly, again, if there's underlying disease, we need to address that as part of our program of skin improvement before we're going to make any sort of major improvement there. And then the next step will be, well, we said the things we'd like to achieve, and I'm sorry the slides aren't going to show us this now, but we want to exfoliate the skin to address roughness. We can use a physical scrub. We can use things like alpha and beta hydroxy acids, which will have that chemical effect, and other agents, including things like papain, which is in some of the products for physio, which can help us to achieve that. And where we have dyschromia and we want to influence the melanocytes, there are various agents which will interfere or affect the way the melanocyte produces pigment, both in terms of the quantity of pigment it produces, but also the way it's laid down to make a more even distribution. And there are things like retinols as well, which affect the way the melanocytes behave. If we're trying to promote collagen, hyaluronic acid, I think many people will say, well, surely that can't be possible with creams, but actually ZO contains a number of agents, including peptides, which are basically short-chain proteins, which we know can influence the way the fibroblast behaves and contribute to that introduction of collagen, hyaluronic acid, which is going to help with that. With dryness and sensitivity of the skin, we want to, again, promote hyaluronic acid, we just mentioned, and also do what we can to improve this barrier function, which we'll look at again. And we use things like ceramides to do this, which are essentially lipids which help to reproduce the natural lipid barrier, which allows our skin to do what it's there to do, essentially, which is to keep the good things in and keep hydration in and to keep the bad things out. Contours, we talked about fillers, and then when it comes to active disease, again, ZO range does contain a number of agents we can use, in particular a specific redness reducing system, which we can use for things like rosacea, flushing, redness, through to acne agents such as sulfur and benzoyl peroxide preparations, etc. So we have a way of addressing the issues that we want to address. And I think, again, the nice thing is we're not talking about creams that look nice or smell nice. We're talking about creams which have a specific function. And as we learn what those functions are, what it is we want to achieve in the skin, then we can match the agents that we want to use from the selection available to us to achieve that. So moving on now, other considerations that we have when it comes to the products we apply to the skin. Clearly, we've got to have good ingredients in there. We've got to have ingredients that we know are going to penetrate the skin, but also penetrate to a level where they're going to be able to have the effect that we want them to have. And they've got to get there in a sufficient concentration to actually have a benefit. And then combined into this whole mixture of complicated things, many agents will behave differently in different pHs. So the pH on the skin has to be correct. And again, we deal with that with the preparation phase. We've got to have the right concentration, as we've said. And a lot of the penetration of products depends on the product being lipid soluble to get through that epidermal layer and to be able then to distribute itself into the epidermis and even into the dermis itself. And we mentioned here oleosomes, which is a specific way of delivering product. If you picture a little bit like a table tennis ball, the outside part of that table tennis ball is a lipid membrane, which is what the oleosome is. And within this lipid membrane is the active product that we're trying to deliver. So, for example, one of the retinol products is packed in oleosomes. The oleosomes penetrate this lipid layer and will just keep penetrating right through the dermis. But as they progress through the skin, they are released in this slow release fashion. And so we're targeting both the epidermal layer and the dermis. And then there's another agent which comes in a microemulsion, which will preferentially deposit in the dermis so we can get really quite deep into the skin with a product that's going to make a difference. So that sort of sets the scene a little bit. We're going to focus mainly today on a group of products known as the Fundamental Five. And if you think of this as the building blocks really for where the zero regime comes in, we can use the Fundamental Five for anybody of any age, and we know that it's going to provide benefits, and those benefits we'll look at shortly. And then we do have all sorts of other things we can do to enhance or change the emphasis of what it is we're trying to achieve. But the Fundamental Five are the sort of building blocks, and we'll look at that. When we're building a zero protocol, we're thinking of three main steps. As we see here, getting skin ready is the first step, and that's really about preparing the skin, helping to condition it a little bit, setting the pH correctly, and allowing the products we're going to apply to be penetrating well. Then step two is the prevent and correct. So depending on what we're trying to achieve, if it's simply maintaining the skin, whether it's helping against aging processes, sun damage, uneven pigment, or with other disease processes, we can mix and match various products into this section. And then the step three is protecting the skin using primarily sunscreens, but also antioxidants, etc. And we're going to look at each of these steps as we go through. So firstly, the getting skin ready stage, as you can see here, is usually the sort of Dr. Obagi mantra is cleanse, scrub, oil control. There are little nuances within each of those steps, so we have different products we can choose from, but that I think shows you what we're after really. And you can see how the exfoliation step both helps to stimulate the epidermis, but it also means that by removing the dead skin layer, we're going to get a better access for the products we're going to apply, and they're going to penetrate better. And then a very important step, particularly with problem skins, often is controlling the sebum. So oil control comes into this third step. So just as an example, these are probably the most common sort of products that we use for those first three steps: a cleanser, exfoliating polish, and the oil control pads. And we'll look at those just a little bit more closely. There are three cleansers you can choose from, and you can suit the cleanser to the skin type you're dealing with. That's fairly straightforward. When it comes to the scrubs, we've got the exfoliating polish, which is, if you like, the standard one which is used for most people. And then we have the dual action scrub, which, as well as having abrasive properties, also contains some salicylic acid and some mandelic acid, which, as you know, can be helpful in reducing oil and helping to prevent and control acne problems. So that's where that comes in. And then the third step, you can use a calming toner for people with quite sensitive skins that you're trying to build up and calm, soothe, and improve. And then you can use slightly more aggressive products like the oil control pads, which again contain salicylic acid 2% and some mandelic acid as part of our acne control or oil control. And then complexion renewal pads are a slightly milder version, which are suitable for most people. Now, interestingly, we know that even just doing these 3 steps will create quite a significant improvement in the skin. And you can see how we have studies which will show that we can reduce things like roughness, oil content of the skin, even redness, while improving dryness, smoothness, softness, etc. And so even those 3 steps, before we've done anything very much, are going to make a nice difference for our patients. So now we're moving on to that second step, and a pretty universal product within the Zeo range is this Daily Power Defense, which is remarkable in that it's almost a 5-in-1. It is a 5-in-1 cream. It has 5 clear functions, all within the one item. And this is something that will appear in almost everybody's regime, whatever it is that we're trying to do for them. This is a standard, if you like. Which is going to be there. And you can see that it's suitable for everybody, and it has a variety of beneficial effects, which we're going to look at a little bit more closely. So the benefits are, and we'll summarize this in a slightly simpler way shortly, but we can repair damaged DNA. We know that sun exposure will damage the DNA, and left unchecked, that can cause some problems later, and so we can help to repair that. We can improve the fibroblast activity by helping to boost collagen and hyaluronic acid production. We can help with improving the skin quality, fine lines, etc. We can help with the barrier function, and it's also loaded with antioxidants, which have a protective effect. Let's just look a little bit at this concept of the barrier function, which you may be familiar with, you may not. Skin's function ultimately is to be the barrier between our bodies and our cellular activities and the outside world. And the epidermis plays a crucial part in that. You can see there the corneocytes, the squamous epithelium really of the epidermis, which are a bit like building bricks in a wall. And the cement between these cells is this lipid layer, which binds them together and creates that nice barrier. And what that barrier will do is keep hydration in. It prevents this transepidermal water loss, which can be harmful to the skin. And at the same time, it's keeping out harmful radiation, pollutants, etc., and anything else that might irritate the skin. On the right-hand side, you can see how that can break down. And the things that can cause that, people with eczema, for example, people that use moisturizer frequently over a long period of time will actually weaken that epidermal barrier. And so there are lots of things which will make the skin more sensitive than it should be. And so if we can build up that barrier function, which the Daily Power Defense is going to help us do, we're going to create a much better environment for the skin. And this is how it's doing it for the skin barrier. We have these ceramides listed under the B heading here, which reproduce and replenish the lipid content to make the cement between the cells. And then we've got various peptides which are going to help improve the fibroblast activity so that we're getting better production of hyaluronic acid. Hyaluronic acid itself is going to retain water in the dermis and give us that hydration by stimulating the skin itself. The way I like to remember the effects of Daily Power Defense, I mean, if I'm talking to patients, it's nice to be able to reel these off quite easily. If you think of the acronym CREAM, C-R-E-A-M, each of those headings gives us one of the activities that's in Daily Power Defense. So ceramides we've mentioned. There's a small amount of retinol as well, and retinol has a variety of effects in the skin. In this case, it's in a relatively low concentration, so it's not going to cause any irritation, but it will have a number of benefits, including thickening the epidermis, creating a smoother skin surface, helping to unclog pores, so it can be helpful for acne as well. These DNA repair enzymes we mentioned, lots of antioxidants, and these peptides known as matrixyl, which is the combination of them, which can help to improve the fibroblast activity. So that's our Daily Power Defense. And then the third step in our protocol is going to be UV protection. And the main 4 sunscreens within the Zeo range, you can see here, and we'll look at them a little bit closer. but there are 4 main products, and there's one new one which I'm going to talk about at the end. So what do we want in a sunscreen? Any sunscreen, we always take it as read, is going to protect us against UVA and UVB, and that's obviously crucial. But the thing with the ZO sunscreens is they go over and above that. They're really more than sunscreens. They're sunscreens but skin treatments at the same time, and they're very comprehensive at the radiation that they're protecting us against. So we have got UVA and UVB protection. We've also got protection against high energy visible light, and that's achieved by using fractionated melanin. So melanin obviously is a substance we have naturally in our skin which helps protect our skins, and here we are applying it to the skin surface, which improves its effectiveness. And we can also prevent against infrared radiation, and this is using one of the high-tech preparations within the ZO range, ZOX12, and this is it's a time-release antioxidant complex containing vitamins A, C, and E, and these are released over a 12-hour period. So rather than having a single application which is going to not be very stable and deactivate after a short time, you've got this day-long protection for the skin by using these antioxidants. And then we have other agents that are added in there as well, which will keep the skin hydrated and help prevent with inflammation and the like. So just looking a little more closely at the sunscreens that we've just mentioned, they fall into 2 broad ranges. One is the physical protection, and this is where we're reflecting the sunlight and the UV using titanium and zinc compounds. And the sunscreen primer is probably the most popular one in our experience. It's very nice, very smooth. It's got a slight tint in it, and it's very light. You can use it in acne-prone skin because it's not oily. It's not going to clog up the pores and cause a problem there. And you can put makeup on over the top of it very nicely. And then we've got a rather more robust broad spectrum factor 50. And then the other group are the chemical protection. So rather than reflecting the light, there are compounds within the sunscreen which absorb the light and prevent it causing us damage that way. And here we have Smart Tone. This is clever in that we can match the tone of the sunscreen to the skin color of the person who's using it. And this happens by virtue of the fact that as you massage the cream into the skin, it releases a little more pigment. So you can massage until the color is matching a natural tone, and that would be very nice. And then Daily Sheer, which again is one of the more standard preparations we use as a daily sunscreen. So there we have it really, the fundamental 5 you see there: cleanse, scrub, oil control, daily pad defense, and the sunscreen. And then as part of our prevent and correct stage, this is where we have any number of other agents that we can also add in. And we'll just look briefly at a few of the main ones of them. Just to run through these, you can see there's a vitamin C serum, it's 10% on the left-hand side. Vitamin C is a very unstable product, compound, and so it needs to be formulated in a slightly acidic environment. It needs to be protected from sunlight and air. And so this packaging enables us to achieve that. It's in an anhydrous cream, which means it has a lovely silky feel to it. But it means particularly that it's not activated until it makes contact with the skin. We've got growth factor serum, which again uses human growth factors, which we know are going to have an effect on stimulating the fibroblast cells. It's a non-irritating application. Anyone can use it without any problems, and that can make significant improvement over time. Radical Night Repair is quite a strong retinol with oleosomes, so it's packaged in these little lipid membranes, and this will penetrate both into the epidermis, preferentially where most of the activity happens, but also it'll have an effect on the dermis as well. Wrinkle and Texture Repair is a slightly less strong retinol, but it still packs a punch, I would say. And in this case, it's a microemulsion, which penetrates to the dermis, so you're getting dermal benefits, a firmer, smoother skin. You can even help with things like scarring by using this product. And then Firming Serum, which is one of the more recent products in the range, which helps to target sagging skin and very specifically helps to strengthen the anchoring fibrils at the dermoepidermal junction and create a tighter bond between the two, which can have clinical effects which have been proven. So a little bit on these key technologies, which we have mentioned to some degree here. ZOX12, we've talked about these little packages of vitamins which work as antioxidants and are released over a 12-hour time frame. Very important when it comes to sunscreens. Z Pro is something that's in a range of the products which is targeting the fibroblast to help increase the production of collagen hyaluronic acid. ZORRS, which is the redness reducing system, which we use in treating things like flushing and rosacea, and works very well, and has a range of different products, all contributing to the benefits that are going to be achieved. And Z-Core, which appears in the firming serum that we alluded to earlier, as well as now in the wrinkle and texture repair as well, so you're getting an extra benefit from that too. So I'm just going to finish now a little bit on a new sunscreen that's been released. It's a sunscreen powder. It's a broad spectrum and it's SPF 30. And it comes in a package as you see here. The blue chamber at the bottom contains the powder, and that's inserted into the bottom of the container. And then at the top is a magnetized lid, which on removal reveals a brush. And so the powder is applied through the brush. And it's the sort of thing where you apply it on the go during the day at intervals. We know that very few people actually apply enough sunscreen in the morning to see them through the day, let alone reapply during the day. So this is a way of encouraging that maximum protection by reapplication very easily and simply during the day. And because it's a powder and the way it's formulated, it has a nice matte finish for the skin. So it will tend to absorb any oily residue on the skin, so stop it feeling shiny and just keep the skin looking bright. It has all the same sun protection as the other agents we've looked at. And in particular, it comes as a light, medium and deep colors. So you can match the shade of the powder to the skin type of the person that you're treating. Key ingredients, as you can see, quite a high proportion of titanium dioxide, zinc as well. Again, melanin, which is in the other products, and the ZOX12 also. So the idea is, as with many sunscreens, apply before it's actually needed or before the sun exposure happens, and then you can reapply it every couple of hours. Anybody over the age of 6 months can use this, of course. So that's a little run through the ZO family of products, rather rushed and speedy. I hope not too much so. Little summary of why I like the ZO products. Dr. Baji has a long pedigree in skincare, as I'm sure you'll know. He's been producing revolutionary skincare really since the 1980s and continues to evolve new things. I think that must be it. I was just going to show you finally. Oh, sorry, we're back. It is very technologically advanced. It has great delivery systems, wide range of options, and we can be anything from mild to very aggressive with our treatments. And ultimately, as I hope you saw from the beginning, we get good results. Thank you very much. And if you're interested in more information, Kerry's on hand now anyway. And here are some contact addresses for more information and for training. So thank you very much. Any questions? Obviously, we'll do our best to answer them, and keep well until we get back up and running. Thank you very much.
And interesting. So as John said, that was, I guess, kind of quite a quick and brief run through from ZO, but there are a few questions here that I will just put to you, John, if that's okay. So sorry, I'm just having a scroll through. So I think the first question we had, someone asked, sorry, one second. So what is good for Asian or Indian skins to help treat pigmentation?
Okay, that's quite a big question really, isn't it? Because there's a range of different types of pigmentation, and as you've alluded to, a range of different skin types as well. I think there are definitely a range of options within the range. We can either use things like the retinol skin brighteners, which contain retinol plus 4 other anti-pigment agents, which all work together, and retinol in different concentrations. So there's 0.25, 0.5, and 1%. There's also a product called Bright Alive, which contains just the 4 anti-pigmentation agents without the retinol, which therefore is non-irritant and easily tolerated. And then we can move up the scale to more prescription-based products as well. So we have quite a range of things we can use. Even the vitamin C has an anti-pigmentation effect. So it is very much about assessing the patient, what is the nature of the pigmentation, and then often it's to do with the tolerability or how tolerant the patient will be to having side effects, because particularly pigmentation in Asian skins and any skins can be quite difficult. And if someone's willing to be more aggressive and accept more in the way of some temporary redness, dryness, flaking, they're going to get a better result more quickly by using a more aggressive system. If you have someone that says, well, no, I couldn't possibly cope with that, then you have to be a little more gentle and expect maybe a slower result and maybe not quite as good an end result. So the Zero training takes you through all of that. And I think it's a great question, but not a simple answer for it. But I think it's about being aware of what options you have and then discussing with your patient and matching the right product for the problem you're treating.
Yeah, and the next question is, you'll probably have somewhat of a similar answer, because also asking about, sorry, just scrolling through. So what are, is there anything in the range, or what are some treatment options that would work for cystic acne in darker skin types, so Black or African skins? So again, pigmentation, but more specifically from cystic acne.
Right. I mean, once you're getting to the cystic stage with acne, then yes, you can do things with the Zero creams. But if someone's getting cystic acne, that's the point at which you may be asking the question, should they be going on to isotretinoin? And depending on your situation, maybe you can prescribe it, or maybe you can refer them to someone else to consider that. If you've looked at that option and either they're not keen on the idea or whatever, then yes, there are definitely things. And this is where you would need to be a bit more aggressive with the cream. So you could use something like retinol, the wrinkle and texture repair, which is the retinol preparation, which is going to penetrate to the dermis. It's going to, it's essentially a vitamin A, as you know, which is the isotretinoin by mouth is also vitamin A. So you can use that. You could use something a bit stronger, like a tretinoin for a short-term thing. And then for me, it will be about tackling the acne first, knowing that any pigmentation issues are going to start to improve if we can tackle the acne. And then we can always look at the pigmentation either at the same time or secondarily along the lines I mentioned earlier.
Okay, great, thank you. Someone else has a question about the growth factor serum. Does it contain human growth factors?
It contains human growth factors, and the important thing, and this is where I must defer hopefully to Kerry, who will be able to answer this, there is a difference between synthetic human growth factors and actual human growth factors. And I know that this is made up in a formula which is known to be completely safe, if that's what's behind the question.
So I think Kerry will continue to answer that in a little bit more detail in the chat.
She can tell you more about the technicalities of the way it's actually formulated.
Yeah, and as we said, if you need any further info on anything, then you'll be able to pass that on afterwards as well. There are a few other questions here, John, which I guess kind of a little bit more about ingredient science in general. Someone's asking whether vitamin C and vitamin A products cancel each other out, so to speak, so cancel out the effects of each other. Do they contraindicate each other? Can you use them together?
I certainly can't think why you can't use them together, as long as the formulation is in a way that is going to allow them both to be absorbed.
Okay.
Certainly with the Zero range, there can be issues in the order in which you apply things, and there are one or two products which you don't generally apply together. And again, that's all covered in the training. But that's the only way I can think. There's no reason why vitamin C and vitamin A can't be helpful in the same person, even in the same application that I'm aware of.
So more about just tracking the bioavailability of the ingredients, I guess.
I would say so, and that one doesn't prevent the absorption of the other. Yes,
yeah. I mean, quite often the the advice is kind of to use, or the principle is, you would have your antioxidant ingredients. You'd also be using your vitamin A, wouldn't you? Your retinol in whatever form.
Exactly.
Okay, great. Someone is asking as well, does light affect the kind of activity or the bioavailability of vitamin A, and if so, after how long? So I guess we're talking about shelf life, really, of vitamin A.
Yes. So vitamin C, vitamin A, they will both degrade over time, in particular on exposure to air, and certainly vitamin C and probably vitamin A the same, actually, in exposure to sunlight. And so the important thing there is the packaging for ZO protects it against both. The way that it's delivered, you're not opening a lid and exposing them to the air and the light. It's contained in a sealed container. Air doesn't get into the container as you're pumping the product out. And so the shelf life actually is pretty good. And with some products that I've used in the past, they discolor after a time, and you can tell they're not quite what they were. Whereas with the ZO, certainly in my experience, that's not been a problem.
Okay, so as patients are using their product, by the time it's basically not going to expire by the time they've.
It's not expired by the time they use it. No.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So talking about the growth factors again. Oh no, sorry, that was Kerry's comment. So just to, if no one else can see this, so Kerry just added, when we're talking about the growth factors, they're plant derived. To stimulate collagen and elastin, and also reduces inflammation to prevent future skin aging. I'm just going to have a look and see. I think we have perhaps have a few more. Oh, so the person who asked about vitamin A and vitamin C together, John, she just clarified that she meant using the ingredients at the same time. So rather than vitamin C in the morning, perhaps, and A in the evening, or vice versa, actually applying the products. I think she means sort of layering them together. Is that something that you can do with vitamin A and vitamin C?
It is something you can do. You wouldn't do it with something, for example, like radical light repair and vitamin C. Carrie will need to back me up on this, but the research is more to do with the formulation than it is about the actual compound. So there's no reason why you can't use vitamin A and vitamin C at the same time. There are certain things in the protocols which will advise against combining two things literally one after the other, in which case, yes, you can separate them out morning and evening, but you'll still get those benefits.
Okay, great, thank you. And this may or may not be something that you are able to answer, but someone has just asked really your opinion on boosting collagen, the most effective ways of boosting collagen in the skin. Do supplements and or powders help? That may or may not be something that you...
Yeah, that's a $1 million question, isn't it? I think when you look at the people that promote and supply these things, they do appear to have some evidence that suggests that it does have an effect. To me, logically, I struggle with the idea that simply by, for example, eating lots of collagen, you're going to make your skin produce more of it, because after all, collagen is simply a protein. Your stomach's going to digest them into amino acids, and your body's going to have some amino acids to do whatever it will with. The way I think of it mainly, if someone asks me, is, okay, well, if you're going to spend however much per month on those products, are you better doing that, or are you better spending the same amount on something else? And I think, yeah, I imagine there is a role for them. It's not huge in my practice. And I think it's about just trying to make your budget go in the most effective directions, really. And for me, I think the jury's slightly out on how much benefit there is from the supplements, but I'm sure there is something to be gained from them.
So if you do have a patient that is perhaps more budget conscious, then perhaps advising them on to start off in their skincare is probably
we see results with skincare. We know it works. We know it's beneficial. And I think, once you get onto the nutrient supplements, it's slightly sort of an icing on the cake thing, which if they've got the spare cash, why not? But is it going to change their skin dramatically? Probably not as much as skincare would.
Okay, brilliant. So I think that's probably all we've got time for. Thank you everyone for your questions. If there is anything else you can always feel free to drop us some more questions within the AM virtual event Facebook page, and we will field them and pass them on to either Kerry or to John to get your questions answered. John, sorry, did you have at the end of your slide, was there some more contact info?
There is some contact info. It's just, I think it's training@wigmoremedical.com is an email. And the other one, I'll draw it up on here and I can tell you was for, if you're looking at training for webinars, wigmoremedical.com/training/webinars. And I think that's online content that people can access to learn more about it.
Brilliant. I've just seen someone who joined late just asked about whether we'd covered treatments for pigmentation. Yes, we did. And this webinar will be available again on our YouTube page and on the AM website, so you will be able to go back and have a look at, have a rewatch.
Okay, briefly is a much bigger subject than we covered today, so that's another thing really.
Yeah,
Kerry can help you with that if you're interested in looking at that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, thank you so much, John. That was brilliant. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and for your questions. Thank you for joining us. Hope you found that helpful. And we are back the rest of today and all throughout the week with more webinar sessions for you. So thank you very much, everyone. Take care. And thank you again, John, and Kerry as well.